Commodus, the son of the great philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius, inherited the most powerful position in the world during Rome's Golden Age. He was meant to be the next great leader in the tradition of wisdom and stability. That is the serene image of the empire he was born into. The terrifying truth is that Commodus immediately discarded philosophy for spectacle and blood. He despised the Senate, scorned governance, and obsessed over one thing: fighting as a gladiator in the arena. He viewed his divine status not as a duty to Rome, but as a license for sadistic public display. This obsession was not mere entertainment. It was a profound psychological breakdown. Commodus forced the Roman elite to witness his grotesque performances, humiliating the Senate and striking absolute terror into the hearts of his courtiers. The public spectacle was a terrifying tool of control. The greatest secret of the Roman Empire is that its glorious heart was ruled by a madman who derived sadistic pleasure from the slow, deliberate torment of his subjects. Don't you dare look away. Watch this entire deep dive documentary and subscribe to Crown of Dread, and you will learn the one shocking medical fact about Commodus's final murder that proves the poisoned meal he ate was given to him by his own concubine. The terror began not with the sword, but with a bizarre ritualistic act of naming himself after a mythological god. Commodus did not just fight as a gladiator. He demanded that the entire Roman Empire acknowledge his delusional self-identity. He believed he was the divine reincarnation of Hercules, the Greek demigod, known for his immense strength and savagery. Commodus forced sculptors and artists to portray him exclusively as Hercules, complete with the lion skin and the massive club. He replaced the head of the colossal statue of Jupiter in the Colosseum with his own portrait. This public, systematic display of narcissism and insanity was a profound psychological assault on Roman society. The ultimate humiliation was forcing the Senate, the most powerful and proud governing body in the world, to address him with these ridiculous divine titles. Senators were compelled to attend his gladiator performances and hail him as Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. This enforced participation in his delusion was the true measure of his tyranny. This situation illustrates the terrifying historical precedent of the cult of personality. Commodus showed that when a totalitarian leader forces the public to participate in his personal bizarre delusion, the entire state infrastructure becomes dedicated to maintaining a dangerous lie. But the true depth of his sadism was revealed in his private torture chambers, a horrifying place where he personally maimed his victims. While the public saw the spectacle of the arena, the Senate and his courtiers knew a private, more terrifying truth. Commodus derived immense personal pleasure from sadistic, hands-on torture performed in the seclusion of his palace. According to reliable Roman historians, Commodus often executed victims using bizarre, elaborate, and prolonged methods. He enjoyed forcing his victims to perform grotesque acts, or, in one horrifying account, he would personally use a feather to slice open his victims' intestines, a slow, agonizing death that prolonged the suffering and ensured his direct participation in the murder. His personal bodyguards were often forced to witness these acts, creating a terrifying precedent that the emperor's cruelty was absolute and deeply personal. The Senate lived in perpetual terror, knowing that a simple frown or perceived slight could condemn them to the emperor's private, sadistic whims. This demonstrates the terrifying historical truth that unchecked power always seeks private, perverse outlets. Commodus showed that when a ruler is absolute, his sadism becomes institutionalized, and the line between personal desire and state policy completely dissolves. But the most shocking victim of his reign was a man who dared to correct the emperor's atrocious archery skills. Commodus's need for public adulation was absolute. Any perceived slight, no matter how small, was met with instant, brutal, and terrifying retribution. The tragic fate of a talented archer in his court serves as the perfect example of his fragile ego. Commodus, obsessed with demonstrating his own skills, once publicly humiliated a talented court archer who was visibly superior to him. Later, when the archer was practicing, Commodus ordered him to be executed and ritually mutilated. The emperor then demanded that the archer's body be displayed in the Colosseum with the sign, "Executed for being a better archer than the emperor." This terrifying act was designed to send a clear message to the Senate and the populace. The emperor's illusion is more important than reality or competence. Anyone who possessed talent that surpassed the emperor's was a direct threat to his carefully constructed self-image. This highlights the historical danger of tyranny breeding incompetence. Commodus showed that when a leader's ego cannot tolerate competence, the best and most honest people are systematically eliminated, leaving a court composed only of fearful sycophants. But the ultimate insult to the Roman state was the emperor's chilling plot to execute the Senate and rename the capital city. As his reign spiraled into chaos, Commodus's madness reached its zenith. He planned a final, devastating act of self-glorification that would have permanently erased the Roman Republic's history and installed his personal cult as the new state religion. Commodus planned to massacre the entire Roman Senate on New Year's Day, 193 AD. He then intended to rename the capital city from Rome to Colonia Commodiana, the colony of Commodus, declaring himself the divine founder of a new golden age. He commanded that the months of the year be renamed after his own various titles. The emperor's final plan was to march from his palace to the Colosseum, dressed as a gladiator, to preside over the slaughter. This was the terrifying plan that finally mobilized his inner circle, his concubine, his chamberlain, and the Praetorian Guard prefect, who realized that his madness was now a threat to their own survival. This demonstrates the terrifying peak of delusional tyranny. Commodus proved that unchecked power often leads to a megalomaniacal desire to erase the past and impose a complete fictional reality on the state, a practice often seen in the architecture and monuments of modern dictators. We have traced the madness from the arena to the plot against the Senate. But the ultimate, darkest secret remains hidden: the desperate, terrifying plot to poison the emperor with his favorite food. The plot to assassinate Commodus was driven not by the noble senators he humiliated, but by the handful of people who knew his private madness best. The chief conspirators were his chamberlain, Eclectus, the Praetorian Guard prefect, Latus, and crucially, his favorite mistress, Marcia. Marcia was deeply devoted to Commodus, but she was a Christian sympathizer and realized that the emperor's final plot to massacre the Senate and rename Rome would inevitably lead to a brutal purge of the Christians. Her political survival and the survival of her faith hinged on the emperor's death. The final trigger for her action was a moment of terrifying, accidental discovery. Marcia accidentally intercepted a death list written by the emperor himself. On this list, which detailed the names of senators and close courtiers slated for execution on New Year's Day, she saw her own name and the names of Eclectus and Latus. Commodus was planning to eliminate them all. This situation illustrates the chilling historical reality that tyranny is self-consuming. Commodus's final act was to turn on his most loyal inner circle, proving that paranoia always destroys the very support structure it relies upon. The conspirators needed a silent killer. They chose the emperor's favorite vice, a highly potent, fast-acting poison delivered with his favorite meal. With their names on the execution list, the conspirators had to act within hours. Marcia, who had intimate access to the emperor's food, was tasked with administering the poison. Their plan was silent, precise, and terrifyingly close to success. Marcia secured a powerful, lethal poison and mixed it into a cup of wine, which she gave to Commodus immediately before his midday meal on New Year's Eve. 192 AD. The poison was designed to incapacitate him quickly, allowing the conspirators to finish the job silently. However, the plan failed catastrophically. Commodus, who was known for his massive appetite, had been drinking heavily throughout the day. The sheer volume of alcohol in his system, combined with his own robust animalistic physique, caused him to violently vomit the poison shortly after ingestion. The emperor survived the initial attempt. The poison failed, but the emperor knew he had been attacked. The conspirators, realizing the horrifying severity of their failure, knew they had minutes before the enraged, poisoned emperor would execute them all. This event is the ultimate historical example of catastrophic failure under pressure. The conspirators' professionalism was undone by the simple, unpredictable factor of the emperor's physiology, forcing them into a desperate, immediate improvisation. The enraged emperor survived the poison. The conspirators were forced to use their final, most brutal weapon, a killer who was already trained in savage murder. The failed poisoning left Commodus weakened and furious, but alive. The conspirators, Marcia, Eclectus, and Latus, needed an assassin who could subdue the powerfully built emperor, a man who believed he was Hercules and who was trained in the deadly art of the arena. They quickly recruited Narcissus, a massive, strong athlete and wrestling partner of Commodus. Narcissus, who likely nursed his own grievances against the emperor's cruelty, was promised immense wealth and political favor to kill his master. Narcissus burst into the emperor's private bath chamber and found the emperor, weakened but still capable of a savage fight. The assassination was not a clean military strike, it was a brutal, intimate wrestling match. Narcissus was forced to strangle Commodus with his bare hands or a cord in the bath, a horrifyingly personal, visceral death. The final indignity was the disposal of the body. The conspirators wrapped Commodus's corpse in a sheet and had it smuggled out of the palace, ensuring his death was not immediately revealed, all to secure their own political survival. This demonstrates the eternal truth that tyrants often fall to the skills they themselves value. Commodus, who obsessed over the physical brutality of the arena, was ultimately killed by a professional athlete who mastered the violence the emperor worshipped. But the most shocking punishment Commodus inflicted on Rome was a bizarre, humiliating ritual performed on his senators in the Colosseum. Commodus's hatred for the Senate was absolute, and he used his gladiator performances to humiliate and eliminate them in the most grotesque ways possible. His most bizarre and infamous act of public cruelty was the ostrich execution. Commodus, dressed as Hercules, would descend into the arena. His opponents were often crippled war veterans or unarmed prisoners, but his most perverse performance involved ostriches. He would line up several ostriches in the arena and, with a massive bow, decapitate them with special crescent-shaped arrows. The terrifying part was the aftermath. He would then stride over to the terrified senators who were seated in the front rows, holding the severed, bloody ostrich heads aloft, and threateningly gesture as if to say, "Your heads are next." This horrifying spectacle was a clear, calculated act of psychological terror that reduced the proud Senate to paralyzed, silent cowards. This is the ultimate historical example of using absurdity to enforce terror. Commodus proved that by forcing the elite to participate in a ridiculous, grotesque spectacle, he could completely break their morale and resistance, a tactic that works to neutralize opposition in any system. With Commodus dead, the conspirators, Latus and Eclectus, faced the immediate, terrifying task of justifying the assassination to the Praetorian Guard and the Roman populace. They couldn't reveal the truth about the failed poisoning and the wrestling match in the bath. They needed a powerful, public lie. Latus and Eclectus fabricated a story that Commodus had gone insane and planned to murder the consuls and the prefect, Latus himself, and then fight as a gladiator on New Year's Day, a final, unforgivable insult to Rome's dignity. The conspirators presented the body and the death list as proof. This political narrative was highly effective. The Senate, already terrified of Commodus's final plot, embraced the lie immediately and declared the dead emperor a public enemy, sentencing his memory, damnatio memoriae, to be erased. The murder was quickly justified as a necessary act of national liberation. This demonstrates the absolute power of controlling the post-crisis narrative. The conspirators proved that the public will quickly accept a convenient lie if it promises stability, showing how easily political violence can be justified under the guise of saving the state. We have traced the public madness and the intimate betrayal, but the darkest secret remains: the bizarre ritual Commodus performed with the amputated limbs of his victims. Commodus's performances in the Colosseum were not limited to fighting trained gladiators. His sadism found its lowest, most perverse outlet in the forced execution of the disabled and the infirm. According to ancient historians, Commodus often executed men who were amputees or who suffered from visible disabilities or crippling diseases. These men were fitted with armor and simple weapons and forced to face the emperor, who was fully armed and dressed as Hercules. This was not a fair fight. It was a cold, calculated execution disguised as a spectacle. Commodus would often use blunt weapons to prolong the suffering of these victims, enjoying the desperate struggle of those who could not possibly fight back. This was the ultimate display of his tyranny, a demonstration of his absolute power over the weakest and most defenseless members of Roman society. This horrifying practice illustrates the ultimate historical reality of tyranny, targeting the vulnerable. Commodus showed that the cruelty of an absolute ruler is most clearly measured by the way they treat those who are powerless, a terrifying metric for evaluating any government. But the most perverse ritual Commodus performed involved the amputated limbs of his victims, a dark ceremony hidden in his private chambers. Commodus's madness extended to the ritualistic desecration of the bodies of those he executed. The blood spilled in the arena was not enough. He needed to possess the physical remains. According to the accounts of his inner circle, Commodus would often order the amputated limbs of his gladiatorial victims, particularly those who fought well, to be brought to his private chambers. He would then engage in a chilling, bizarre ritual of mutilation and mockery over the severed parts. The most disturbing accounts suggest he sometimes commanded his favored concubine, Marcia, to participate or witness these perverse acts, turning his private living quarters into a chamber of horrors. This was a form of dark worship, where the emperor believed he was absorbing the strength of the fallen warrior through ritualistic dominance over their remains. This demonstrates the ultimate historical act of psychological power projection. Commodus showed that the tyrant seeks to control his victim even after death, using the remains as a tool to reinforce his own dominance and erase the memory of their courage. But the ultimate insult to the Roman state was the emperor's final act of self-condemnation, a shocking demand regarding his own body after his death. The sheer relief that swept through Rome following Commodus's assassination was palpable. The Senate, once terrified and paralyzed, acted with brutal, vengeful speed to secure their position and symbolically destroy the tyrant's memory. The Senate immediately declared damnatio memoriae upon the dead emperor, a condemnation of his memory, ordering his name to be erased from all public inscriptions and statues. But their revenge was also physical. The Senate demanded that Commodus's body be dragged through the streets of Rome with a hook and then thrown into the Tiber River, a humiliating fate usually reserved for the most grievous traitors and criminals. This ritualistic desecration was a political necessity. The Senate needed to publicly reclaim the dignity of the state and show the populace that the nightmare was over. The emperor, who believed he was a god, was treated as the lowest of criminals. This historical event highlights the enduring power of post-mortem vengeance. It shows that even in death, the body of a brutal dictator remains a potent political symbol, and its desecration is a necessary act of public catharsis and political transition. But the true historical injustice was the treatment of the honest historians, a crime that continues to suppress the full horror of Commodus's reign. The assassination of Commodus was immediately followed by a terrifying political cleanup. The new emperor, Pertinax, and the subsequent Severan dynasty, while officially condemning Commodus, engaged in a systematic process of censorship to control the historical record. Historians who wrote accurate, detailed accounts of Commodus's extreme sexual depravity, his madness, and the full extent of the court's corruption were often silenced, exiled, or had their works suppressed. The new dynasty feared that a complete, truthful exposure of the previous emperor's crimes would destabilize the entire imperial system and erode public faith in the throne itself. This censorship meant that much of the most disturbing, explicit information about Commodus's private sadism and the role of the imperial guard in his downfall was deliberately lost or only survived in fragmented later accounts. The truth was deemed too dangerous for the Roman populace to handle. This demonstrates the timeless tactic of selective historical memory. The Roman state proved that controlling the narrative of the past is essential for maintaining control in the present, a practice of official censorship that remains a powerful tool for authoritarian regimes. We have witnessed the madness, the murder, and the political aftermath. Now, for the final critical verdict. We must confront the ultimate moral question. We have unsealed the horrifying secrets of the Emperor Commodus, the public madness of the arena, the private sadism of the torture chambers, the failure of the poisoned assassination, and the brutal final strangulation by his own wrestler. Commodus proved that when the emperor is absolute, the entire state infrastructure becomes dedicated to maintaining his most dangerous private delusions. The crown of dread was exchanged for a lion's skin, and Rome nearly collapsed under the weight of his personal madness. We have revealed the entire horrifying truth. But now, we turn the final question to you, the crown of dread audience. Commodus murdered the weakest members of Roman society, the disabled and the infirm, for sadistic pleasure in the Colosseum. Does this act, using disabled citizens for personal entertainment and murder, make Commodus's reign the ultimate expression of unforgivable tyranny and cruelty, even when compared to political regicide? Let the world know your verdict. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe to Crown of Dread for more hidden history. And join us next time as we unearth the terrifying stories of blood and betrayal from the secret courts of medieval England.